Imagine you are standing perfectly still in the middle of a forest. You aren't making a sound. You aren't holding a weapon. You are just standing there, breathing the air, maybe wearing a fleece jacket, holding a half-eaten granola bar. A twig snaps. 10 yards away, a white-tailed deer steps into the clearing. For a fraction of a second, the forest is peaceful. And then the deer sees you. It doesn't just look at you. It locks onto you with eyes wide enough to show the whites. Its muscles instantly flood with adrenaline. Its heart rate spikes to over 200 beats per minute. In an instant, it wheels around and violently launches itself into the thick brush, tearing through thorns and branches as if the devil himself is one step behind it. A squirrel drops an acorn and scrambles up an oak tree, pressing itself completely flat against the bark, frozen in pure, unadulterated terror. The birds go dead silent. You haven't moved an inch. You haven't made a threat. But to the forest, your mere presence is a catastrophic event. Why? Why are animals, creatures armed with razor-sharp claws, venom, antlers, night vision, and the ability to sprint at 50 miles per hour, absolutely terrified of us? We are slow. We have terrible hearing. Our night vision is a joke. If we try to run through a dense forest, we usually just trip over a root and sprain an ankle. We are soft, squishy, mostly hairless apes. Yet we command a level of terror in the animal kingdom that defies logic. The answer to why this happens goes so deep into our evolutionary history and into the psychology of the natural world that it will entirely change how you view a simple walk in the park. To understand this, we have to travel back a few million years to the savannas of Pleistocene Africa. We need to talk about how early humans hunted. Most predators in the animal kingdom rely on explosive speed or stealth. A cheetah relies on a 30-second burst of impossible velocity. A leopard drops from a branch. A crocodile strikes from the muddy water in a fraction of a second. If these animals miss their initial strike, the hunt is over. They are exhausted. The prey gets away. Early humans did not hunt like this. We were not fast, and we were certainly not stealthy. Instead, we used a strategy called persistence hunting. And from a prey animal's perspective, persistence hunting is straight out of a horror movie. Imagine you are an antelope. You see a strange, upright creature approaching you. You easily sprint away, putting a mile between you and the creature in under a minute. You stop under a tree to rest. But 10 minutes later, that same upright creature appears over the horizon, jogging at a steady, rhythmic pace. You run again. You put another 2 miles between you. You stop, your chest heaving in the midday heat. But 20 minutes later, the creature appears again. It never sprints. It never roars. It just keeps coming. Because humans sweat, we can dump body heat efficiently, allowing us to run for hours in the blazing sun. Prey animals, covered in fur, cannot. They must stop and pant to cool down. Early humans exploited this. We would simply jog after an animal for 4, 5, or 6 hours until the animal's biology critically failed and it collapsed from total heat exhaustion. We were the terminators of the ancient world. We absolutely would not stop. This hunting strategy didn't just kill animals, it fundamentally altered the genetic psychology of the ones that survived. The antelopes, the deer, the wild boars that didn't panic when they saw an upright bipedal silhouette got run to death. The ones that experienced immediate, overwhelming terror at the sight of humans ran early, survived, and passed that hyper-vigilant DNA down to their offspring. over thousands and thousands of generations, a deep primal panic became hardwired into the animal brain. When that deer in the forest looks at you, it isn't making a conscious calculation about whether you are a threat. It is executing a survival algorithm that was coded into its ancestors millions of years ago by the most relentless pursuit predators the Earth has ever seen. But it gets even stranger. It makes sense that prey animals are terrified of us. But what about the apex predators? What about the animals that eat deer for breakfast? In 2016, wildlife ecologists from the University of Western Ontario decided to test exactly how scary humans are. They set up hidden speakers in the forests of California, rigged to play different sounds when animals walked by. They played the sounds of dogs barking. They played the sounds of wolves. They played the roaring of mountain lions. And they played the sound of humans. But they didn't play humans yelling or shooting guns. They just played an audio clip of a completely normal, mundane human conversation. Just two people talking in a normal tone of voice, like you'd hear at a coffee shop or a bus stop. The results shocked the scientific community. When apex predators, mountain lions, bobcats, bears, heard the sound of wolves or dogs, they were certainly cautious. But when those same top-tier predators heard the casual conversation of humans, they fled in absolute panic. Mountain lions abandoned their freshly caught meals and bolted. Bobcats vanished into the brush. They fled from human voices at more than twice the rate they fled from any other sound in the forest. The ecologists coined a term for this, the super predator. We are not just a predator. We are the predator that terrifies the other predators. Even animals at the absolute top of the food chain, animals with no natural enemies, possess a deeply ingrained historical memory that human beings equal death. Because throughout history, we didn't just hunt prey. We hunted the competition. We killed wolves to protect our camps. We drove big cats out of their territories. We systematically eliminated anything with sharp teeth that challenged our dominance. And from the perspective of wild animals, the scariest thing about a human isn't our weapons. It is our utter unpredictability. In nature, predictability is what keeps you alive. Animals survive by reading patterns. A herd of elk knows that wolves are most active at dawn and dusk, so they adjust their grazing times. Small mammals know that hawks hunt in open fields, so they stick to the tree line. Every predator has a specific habitat, a specific hunting hour, and a specific method of attack. Humans break every single rule. We hunt in the morning, in the afternoon, and in the dead of night. We hunt in the deepest forests, the widest plains, the highest mountains, and the open ocean. We hunt alone, and we hunt in massive, coordinated groups. We use spears, bows, traps, rifles, nets, and drones. Sometimes we come into the forest and cut down all the trees. Sometimes we just hike through the trails and leave granola crumbs. Sometimes we sit on a bench and feed bread to ducks for an hour. To an animal brain, this lack of a pattern is terrifying. There is a concept in behavioral ecology called predator recognition. Prey animals categorize threats. They have a specific evasive maneuver for a diving bird and a different maneuver for a stalking cat. But humans don't fit into any biological category. We are an unsolvable variable. And in the wild, when you encounter a variable you cannot solve, the only mathematically safe response is maximum immediate avoidance. Now, if you live in a city, you might be thinking, wait a minute. If animals are so terrified of us, Why does the raccoon in my alleyway stare me dead in the eye while eating my leftover pizza? Why do seagulls steal French fries directly out of people's hands? Why won't the pigeon on the sidewalk even bother to move out of my way? This brings us to a phenomenon called habituation, and it proves just how adaptable the animal brain really is. Fear is expensive. Being terrified requires a massive amount of calories. Adrenaline spikes burn energy, and running away burns even more. If an animal is constantly running away, it isn't eating, and if it isn't eating, it dies. When animals are forced to live in close proximity to humans, like pigeons in New York or raccoons in Toronto, they run a constant cost-benefit analysis. Over several generations, the animal brain realizes something crucial. These weird hairless apes are loud and everywhere, but they don't actually attack us here. In fact, they drop a lot of easily accessible carbohydrates. The brain begins to selectively downgrade the threat level. The fear response is turned off because it is no longer biologically useful. This is habituation. But certain animals take this a step further. Crows, for example, don't just habituate to humans. They surveil us. Crows have a fiercely high level of intelligence and a massive brain-to-body ratio. Studies at the University of Washington proved that crows can recognize and remember individual human faces. If you wrong a crow, if you chase it or threaten its nest, that specific crow will remember your face. It will scold you when you walk by. But it gets worse. It will teach other crows in the neighborhood that you are dangerous. It will teach its children to hate you. Years later, crows that weren't even born when the initial incident happened will dive bomb you because your face has been passed down through local crow culture as a threat. They have lost their fear of our species, but they have maintained a highly specific cultural watch list of individual humans. But what happens if we look at the exact opposite scenario? What happens when you encounter an animal that has never, ever been exposed to human beings? This is the ultimate proof that animal fear is not a factory setting. It is learned. When human explorers first arrived on the Galapagos Islands in the 1800s, Charles Darwin recorded his sheer confusion at the behavior of the wildlife. The animals didn't run. Marine iguanas simply sat on the rocks while Darwin walked right up to them. Blue-footed boobies nested directly on the ground and didn't even flinch when sailors stepped over them. The same thing happens in the most remote regions of Antarctica today. Penguins will walk right up to scientists, peck at their boots, and inspect their camera equipment with zero hesitation. Why? Because these animals evolved on isolated islands and frozen continents entirely disconnected from the human timeline. They missed the Pleistocene era. They were never chased by persistence hunters. They never had to compete with us for resources. Because humans were absent from their evolutionary history, the survival algorithm for human fear was never written into their DNA. The most tragic example of this is the dodo bird. Native to the island of Mauritius, the dodo had no natural predators. When Dutch sailors arrived in the late 1500s, they found a large, flightless bird that was perfectly happy to walk right up to them and investigate. The dodo wasn't stupid. It simply existed in a world where the concept of a predator did not exist. The sailors hunted them to extinction in less than a century, effortlessly, because the birds lacked the evolutionary programming to run away. First contact situations prove a profound point. Animals only fear us because we taught them to. And that teaching extends beyond just our behavior. We also smell terrifying. Even if you go into the woods completely unarmed, with the best intentions, you are broadcasting a massive chemical warning signal. Human scent is highly distinctive. We exude a complex mixture of sweat, synthetic deodorants, laundry detergents, and dietary byproducts. To an animal with a highly developed olfactory system, a human smells like an unnatural alien event. In wildlife management, biologists often use predator urine to keep deer away from crops. The scent of a mountain lion or a wolf triggers an automatic avoidance response. But studies have shown that wiping human sweat on a piece of fabric and leaving it in the woods produces the exact same result. A deer smells a human being and reacts with the exact same level of chemical dread as if it smelled a pack of hungry wolves. You don't even have to be in the forest to scare the animals. You just have to leave your scent behind. This overwhelming, multi-sensory terror has created something ecologists call the landscape of fear, and it is currently reshaping the geography of the entire planet. Fear is an invisible force of nature. It acts like a gravitational pull, warping how ecosystems function. When humans simply move into an area, build a hiking trail, or set up a research camp, the wildlife fundamentally changes its behavior. Animals that normally feed in the open meadows retreat deep into the dense brush. Animals that usually drink from the river during the afternoon start waiting until midnight. In 2018, a massive global study tracked the behavior of dozens of mammal species across 6 continents. The findings were staggering. In response to human activity, mammals all over the world are shifting their schedules to become nocturnal. Deer, coyotes, boars, and even tigers are abandoning the daylight. They are becoming creatures of the night, simply to avoid overlapping with humans. We are not actively hunting these specific animals, yet our mere presence is enough to flip the biological clocks of the global ecosystem. We are forcing the natural world into the shadows. It is easy to feel a sense of guilt when you realize the sheer scale of the panic we cause. The fact that your weekend hike forces a local fox into a state of severe anxiety seems deeply unfair. We are a dominant, noisy, ecologically disruptive force. The fear that animals feel toward us is statistically, historically, and biologically completely justified. But this story doesn't have to end in permanent alienation. The landscape of fear is learned, which means it can be unlearned. Wildlife scientists are discovering that when humans change their behavior, animals are incredibly quick to update their threat models. In marine reserves where commercial fishing and spearfishing have been strictly banned for decades, a massive behavioral shift occurs. Fish that would normally dart away at the sight of a scuba diver begin to relax. Goliath groupers and reef sharks start swimming casually alongside humans, realizing that the underwater apes are no longer carrying spears. In the dense jungles of Rwanda and Uganda, conservationists have performed a miracle of habituation with mountain gorillas. Decades ago, gorillas would flee instantly or attack defensively at the sight of a human, traumatized by poachers. But through years of patient, non-threatening, consistent daily presence, park rangers slowly proved to the gorillas that they were safe. Today, wild silverbacks will sit peacefully chewing bamboo while human observers sit just 20 feet away. The gorillas didn't forget their instincts. They gathered new data. They learned that specific humans, in a specific context, were not a threat. The fear animals have of us is a reflection of our past. It is the echo of millions of years of survival, written into the very genetics of the natural world. When that squirrel freezes on the lawn, or that deer bolts through the trees, they are paying respect to the most formidable, adaptable predator this planet has ever seen. But our history does not have to dictate our future. We possess a level of intelligence and self-awareness that allows us to choose our role in the ecosystem. We can be the super predator that forces the world into the dark, or we can be the stewards who prove that the landscape of fear can be dismantled. The animals are watching us, waiting to see what we do next.